You know, Zillow is great when it comes to looking at the style of the house. So is Redfin, Realtor, and wherever else you like looking at. I'm sure it's great to see if the house has granite countertops or the layout of the home. But what it's not really good at is what's it really like living in that area. There are little quirks and things that locals tend to know about that it's really hard to think about if you're relocating here, especially from somewhere else. Well, in this video, I've got your back. I'm going to give you the inside scoop on some of these things to consider to help making your move to Winston-Salem a little bit easier. And if you need help buying or selling real estate, my contact information is on the screen and in the description below. But the first thing we want to talk about is actually the layers of location. You've probably heard location, location, location. Of course, that's important, but there are some layers to this. It's important when we have a phone call or Zoom meeting that we talk about some of these things, but they're mostly, what is your day-to-day lifestyle? Is it picking up the kids from school and taking them to school? Is it your Tuesday morning yoga or grocery store runs or going out to eat or the art museums? Whatever your day-to-day lifestyle is, we just want to make sure it factors in, because you might look at somewhere on the map and it says, oh, this looks like a nice place and a good location, but we know some places there are nuances to that. Pick up and drop off times for school maybe can get busy. Calvary Day School is one that comes to a mind immediately. You're going along there and it can get really crowded around pick up and drop off times, so that makes the intersection of, you know, Country Club and Peace Haven really crowded on certain times of day. So the neighborhood right next to it, that left you have to make to get out of there, could be a little bit more difficult. Or neighborhoods that might be just 10 minutes apart, but one has, you know, sidewalk streets and the other one no sidewalks. Little nuances like that. We want to talk about just the layers of location when it comes to making your move and what's important to you. Another common one out here is because the terrain is a little bit more hilly. It's more up and down on some streets, especially in some neighborhoods. It can vary drastically. And so while you're looking at a home on Zillow, it might look great, but I might be able to tell you, hey, this is at the bottom of a hill. When we get those summer rains and everything like that, things really tend to drain down right towards this house. And we want to really make sure that the basement doesn't have water, or there's some water mitigation, or maybe you just want to avoid that house altogether. So there are layers to the location that we want to talk about, and Winston is really varied in all of that, so it's important to dig a little bit deeper. The next thing you can't really tell about Zillow, to kind of follow up on this, is relocation is about rebuilding your lifestyle. It's not just a house. And that obviously can be tougher to tell on Zillow and these other websites, but that's what a good agent is here to do, is to really help you rebuild your lifestyle. So that's when I say, you know, the house doesn't matter yet. Some people are like, wait, what do you mean? Of course the house matters. That's where I'm going to live. But I'm just talking about beyond the structure itself. Talking more about that lifestyle. What is your day-to-day like? And previously we just talked about location, but really this is important on the neighborhood by neighborhood level, because Winston-Salem has so many different neighborhoods. You have some within the city that can feel really similar, like Ardmore and West End, or you have some in the city that can feel really different. You know, Sherwood Forest is going to feel much different than those other two. So that's why it's important when we talk, we find out more about your lifestyle and what you're looking for, because the neighborhoods can vary so drastically. And some neighborhoods might have more families, some may be the opposite, but here's one that people don't think of often, is some neighborhoods, it's got the great mature trees and landscaping and things like that, larger lots, things that people really tend to gravitate to, but the neighborhood is kind of aging out. So there's some turnover going on there. So in the same neighborhood, you might have young, old, families, single people. You might have homes that are completely renovated and some that need a ton of work to them, all in the same neighborhood. These neighborhoods can also tend to be a little bit quieter because there is a mix of people. People can tend to kind of keep to themselves a little bit more. And then you have the total opposite end of the spectrum. Ardmore is probably best known for this, for their neighborhood activities, but there are a lot of neighborhoods out here where they have, you know, a quarterly potluck, or they get together in the cul-de-sac every week for a beer or something. You know, there's a lot of different neighborhoods. So depending on what your lifestyle is, maybe you work nights and you like peace and quiet, we'll direct you to a different area. So the first one again was location and the layers behind that, but the second one is really planning on how are you going to rebuild your lifestyle when you move to Winston-Salem. And we're going to spend almost as much time talking about your lifestyle as the type of house you want. What's important to you? What do you like to be near? More importantly, what do you want to be far away from? All those different things like that to help you really build your lifestyle when you get to Winston-Salem. It's just difficult to do on Zillow. All right, the next one that is tough to tell on Zillow if you're not living in Winston-Salem is HOAs. And I know that word just strikes fear into the heart of some people because of terrible experience they've either had or heard about. Let's talk about HOAs for just a minute, because they're probably different in Winston-Salem than what you came from. I know they're much different than where I lived in Illinois. But at the same time, there are some that are more involved than others. Some of them, are really chill. It's just a simple annual thing for upkeep around the common areas. And some, you can't have a clothesline in your backyard, and on and on and on. Some won't care if you paint your house purple, and some really have to approve this specific style of shutters you put on your house. It really just depends. The good news is in Winston-Salem, the vast majority of HOAs here are very relaxed, and they just have a few neighborhood standards. But the most important thing to look at, if you're avoiding HOAs especially, is deed restrictions. It's something I had not experienced before I moved here 6 years ago, is there are a lot of neighborhoods here that have deed restrictions. They might not have an HOA, but there are rules for the neighborhood that will prohibit certain types of things. And some of those can be really odd or wild things that you would not think that should or shouldn't be allowed, like clotheslines, for example, is one that can happen. Or maybe you want to build a shed or a separate workshop or an ADU for Airbnb. Like, there will be deed restrictions within certain neighborhoods that you can and cannot do these types of things. So it's important, just when you see no HOA, don't just assume that it's going to be a free-for-all and you can do whatever you feel like, because that's not always the case. And it's important to note that not all neighborhoods will have deed restriction, but a fair amount of them will. So when we're looking, we're really going to look at, one, does it have a HOA? What does that entail? But two, are there deed restrictions? Let's make sure we have a conversation about that. Next thing that is tough to learn about if you're looking on Zillow only is the truth about traffic. And I know some of the things online, people that live here say that the traffic's terrible and all these things like that. Coming from the suburbs of Chicago, I found that not to be the case whatsoever, but there are some certain local quirks and things like that around traffic. I've mentioned a couple with the schools, that's a common one, but there are other certain places where are going to get some bottlenecks or where the infrastructure hasn't quite caught up yet. Winston-Salem has done a really good job in most places of being ahead of the curve on those things. That's mostly on the highway system and the on again, off again, postpone, push back, beltway system. If that ever gets done, they've been ahead of the curve on a lot of these things, but there are definitely some quirks to think about when you're moving. It's tough to find out on Zillow when you're looking at that house, if it happens to be right near Haynes Boulevard and Stratford, that gets really crowded, especially around Christmas time when all the shoppers are out, that area can get pretty trafficky. It's tough to find that out on Zillow, but we're going to talk about all of those things. Or maybe your GPS says, hey, it's only 15 minutes away, but it's not taken into account. It's Christmas time and there are lights at Tanglewood. That traffic there is going to be backed up for maybe a long time. It's going to take you longer than 15 minutes. Just little quirks like that we're going to talk through again about traffic in certain areas. The next thing we're going to talk about that you can't really find out about on Zillow is what's important to you as an individual or a family. Remember, when you're coming here, you're not just relocating, you're actually rebuilding or transplanting your lifestyle from one place to another. So to make sure that that's a good fit is going to be really important. And after helping hundreds of people move here over the years, I've developed a really good skill to be able to empathize and put myself in your position as far as what your lifestyle needs are, and then really help make some recommendations to really take your search down from a really big area to a little bit smaller area, and then a little bit smaller till we're ready to go and find the right house for you. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate in Winston-Salem or anywhere around, I'd love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.